You've found Dreamtime Science, a peaceful corner where we unravel the mysteries of our universe one whisper at a time. Let the gentle current of discovery carry you towards sleep. You know what's fascinating? How our minds often spot patterns and stories in things that might just be random shapes or sounds. I've been thinking about why we're so good at seeing meaning even when there isn't any. It's like our brains are little storytellers, always eager to connect the dots. Tonight, I'd love to share why this curious habit is not just a quirk, but something that tells us a lot about how we experience the world. A soft tap of the like button or a whispered subscription tells me these calming discoveries resonate with you. What aspect of science brings you the most wonder? Now, take a moment. Adjust your blanket, find the perfect hollow in your pillow, let your shoulders melt, breathe in and out. In the quiet hush of night, as the world slips into the gentle embrace of darkness, a curious transformation unfolds upon the walls of our bedrooms. The dim glow of a street lamp slants through a curtain, painting shifting shapes across the ceiling. Shadows blend and stretch, softening the edges of familiar objects, and before long, a child's eyes, startled awake, might see a dragon poised above the wardrobe, or a kindly old man's face watching from the folds of a curtain. This ancient trick of the mind, the tendency to glimpse meaningful shapes in chaos, lies at the heart of our nightly world. It is called pareidolia, a word with roots stretching back through centuries of wonder and superstition. It is not a flaw, but a feature, a testament to the brilliance and adaptability of the human mind, shaped by eons of evolution to seek significance in the uncertain and the unseen. Pareidolia is the reason a stain on a wall or a cloud drifting across the afternoon sky can become, in an instant, a galloping horse, or the gentle smile of a grandmother long gone. Yet it is at night, when reason is softened by sleep and the senses are tuned to subtlety, that this phenomenon most often dances at the edge of perception. But what is it truly that makes our brains conjure pattern from randomness? To answer this, we must journey deep into the architecture of the mind, wandering the neural pathways where vision is processed and meaning is forged. Our eyes, for all their complexity, are not mere cameras. They gather photons, yes, but the tapestry of sight is woven in the brain, where billions of neurons interpret, filter, and reconstruct the incoming signals. The visual cortex, located at the back of the skull, is a marvel of biological engineering, composed of intricate layers that detect lines, shapes, motion, and color. Yet, this machinery does not operate in isolation. It is intimately connected to regions responsible for memory and emotion, for language and logic. From the earliest moments of life, the brain is trained to find patterns. A newborn, hardly able to fix its gaze, is nevertheless drawn to the symmetry of a human face, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. Evolution has favored those who can swiftly recognize friend from foe, prey from predator, nourishment from poison. Survival, in the wild chorus of nature, often depends on the ability to detect meaning in the ambiguous. The rustle of leaves could be mere wind, or the silent approach of a stalking leopard. The mind errs on the side of caution, assembling fragmented cues into familiar forms. This pattern-seeking instinct, so vital in the forests and savannas of our ancestors, lingers within us, refined and repurposed for a world of written words, painted canvases, and glowing screens. We are by nature storytellers, the mind's eye perpetually crafting narrative from the raw material of sensation. Consider for a moment the timeless fascination with the moon. Since the dawn of language, poets and peasants alike have gazed upward and woven stories from the pale, cratered face that hangs in the sky. In the West, many see the visage of a man, the man in the moon, his features etched in shadow and light, gazing placidly down upon the earth. In China, the same moon reveals a rabbit, immortalized in legend, endlessly pounding the elixir of life. In the Andes, children are taught to seek the silhouette of a fox. The moon becomes a mirror for the mind, reflecting the myths and imaginings of each culture. Yet these faces and figures are not truly there. The lunar surface, battered by eons of meteorite impacts, is a landscape of craters and maria, vast plains of solidified lava. The shadows that conjure a man's smile or a rabbit's ears are cast by ridges and basins, their arrangement a product of geological accident rather than intention. And yet, the illusion is so persuasive that entire generations have taken it for granted, weaving their own lives into the mystery. The phenomenon is not limited to the moon. In 1976, a photograph taken by the Viking 1 orbiter as it swept over the Martian surface captured the imagination of millions. There, in the red sands of the Cydonia region, a blurry formation of rock and shadow appeared to show an enormous face gazing skyward, a brooding ancient countenance on a distant world. The image was splashed across newspapers and television screens, heralded by some as evidence of lost civilizations, even extraterrestrial architects. But the truth, as subsequent and higher resolution images revealed, was far more prosaic. The face on Mars was nothing more than a mesa, its appearance shaped by the interplay of sunlight and camera angle. When seen under different lighting, the illusion vanished, replaced by the rugged, formless reality of stone and dust. Still, the image persisted in popular culture, a testament to the enduring power of pareidolia. And so it goes, from the surface of Mars to the embers of a dying campfire, from the whirls of wood grain in an ancient door to the clouds drifting above a summer field. The mind's hunger for pattern is insatiable. It is why, in the flickering blue of television static, faces seem to flicker and fade. It is the reason that the Virgin Mary has appeared in the toasted browns of a grilled cheese sandwich, or that saints are glimpsed in the stains of a subway wall. The psychological underpinnings of pareidolia are complex and layered. At their heart is the brain's remarkable efficiency, a tendency to use shortcuts or heuristics to make sense of the world with minimal information. One of the most powerful of these is the ability to detect faces, a skill so deeply embedded in our neural circuitry that a specific region of the brain, the fusiform face area, is devoted almost entirely to this task. Here, even the crudest suggestion of two eyes and a mouth can trigger recognition. This ability is so finely tuned that it often fires in error, conjuring faces where none exist. Neuroscientists have explored this phenomenon in the laboratory, presenting subjects with images ranging from overtly face-like patterns to random noise. Functional MRI scans reveal that the brain responds to these false faces with almost the same intensity as to real ones. The mere hint of symmetry, the whisper of familiar proportions, is enough to set the machinery of recognition in motion. Children, whose brains are still learning the boundaries between fantasy and reality, are particularly susceptible. A pile of laundry in the corner becomes a lurking monster. The knots in wooden furniture are watchful eyes. But adults too are not immune. In the late hours of the night, when fatigue blurs the edges of certainty, a coat draped over a chair can seem to breathe, a shadow can whisper of hidden presences. This tendency is not restricted to vision. Auditory pareidolia, too, can play curious tricks, turning the hiss of wind into voices, the hum of machinery into distant music. It is the engine behind the phenomenon of backmasking, where listeners hear hidden messages in reversed or distorted audio, and the reason that ghost hunters sometimes interpret the static of a radio as the speech of spirits. The capacity for pareidolia is woven deeply into the fabric of human culture and belief. Throughout history, omens and portents have been read in the patterns of nature, the flight of birds, the entrails of animals, the arrangement of stars. The ancients charted the heavens, linking the scatter of constellations into mythic beasts and heroes. A handful of bright points became the mighty Orion, his belt and sword shining across millennia. The zodiac, the dippers, the Pleiades, each is a testament to our yearning for pattern, our need to place a story upon the blankness of the night. Artists and writers have long played with this tendency, using suggestion and ambiguity to evoke meaning. The Rorschach inkblot test, devised in the early 20th century, asks subjects to describe what they see in a series of ambiguous shapes. The answers are as varied as the minds that behold them, reflecting not only universal tendencies, but also the unique contours of individual experience. In modern times, pareidolia has found new life in the digital world. Algorithms designed for facial recognition are sometimes fooled by the same patterns that trick the human mind. A car's headlights and grille become a smiling face. The arrangement of windows on a building takes on a curious expression. Social media abounds with collections of such images, shared for amusement or wonder. Yet, while pareidolia can amuse and delight, it can also mislead. In the realm of science, the impulse to find order in chaos can be both a blessing and a curse. It is a powerful driver of discovery. Many great breakthroughs have begun with the recognition of patterns overlooked by others. But it also carries the risk of confirmation bias, the tendency to see what we expect or hope to find. The canals of Mars, imagined by 19th century astronomers peering through imperfect telescopes, are one such example, a testament to the mind's ability to impose structure where none exists. The interplay between reality and illusion is delicate. For every dragon glimpsed in the clouds, there is the risk of a shadow mistaken for substance, myth mistaken for fact. Yet it is this very tension that gives rise to art, to story, to the endless fascination with the unknown. As you lie in the darkness, eyes adjusting to the subtle gradations of shadow and light, you may find yourself drifting amid these illusions. The mind, untethered from the day's demands, begins to wander the landscapes of possibility. Patterns emerge, dissolve, and reform, a parade of faces, beasts, and symbols, each as fleeting as the dreams that follow. Beneath it all is the quiet hum of the brain at work, ceaselessly searching for meaning, for connection, for story. It is a gentle echo of the ancient world, when survival depended on the keenest eyes and the swiftest interpretations. We are, all of us, children of that heritage, creatures of pattern, forever seeking order in the tapestry of existence. And so, the next time a shadow on the wall transforms into something more, or a cloud drifts by in the shape of a beloved animal, pause and feel the wonder of it. For in that moment, you are touching the deepest roots of what it means to be human, a maker of stories, a finder of faces, a dreamer amid the patterned shadows. Yet the story of pareidolia is only one layer of the mind's mysterious workings. There are deeper currents beneath the illusions, mechanisms that shape not only what we see, but how we understand and remember. In the silent theatre of the brain, the play of shadows is just the beginning, hinting at the vast architecture that underlies perception itself. Beneath the surface of daily life, amid the gentle tick of clocks and the subtle choreography of sunlight across familiar walls, there is a deeper maze, a labyrinth not of stone but of thought and instinct, woven into the fabric of every human mind. It is a realm where certainty is craved, where meaning shimmers just out of reach, and where the restless intellect finds itself forever deciphering, connecting, and interpreting. Here, in this intricate architecture of the psyche, we encounter the ancient compulsion to find order, to impose sense upon the vast and often indifferent universe. This journey into the labyrinth of complexity is, in many respects, a journey into ourselves. Our senses bring the world to us, not as a raw flood of data, but as a tapestry already threaded with implication. The mind, ever vigilant, sorts, arranges, distinguishes, teasing out patterns from the chaos, hunting for the faintest symmetry, the faintest echo of what has come before. It is a dance that began long before the flicker of electric light, before the first cities, before even the first campfires, when the ancestors of modern humans peered through the gloom of prehistory and sought to understand. Consider for a moment the primal scene, a figure crouched in the tall grass, attentive to the wind's murmur, the rustle of leaves, the distant snap of a twig. In those ancient wilds, the mind's hunger for pattern was a vital survival tool. To notice the regularity of animal tracks, to perceive the subtle change in bird song that might signal a lurking predator, to recognize the cycle of seasons and the bloom of edible plants, all these were matters of life and death. Those whose minds could reliably extract signal from noise had a distinct advantage. They could predict, avoid, and prepare, reading the world as one might read a secret code. Over untold generations, this tendency deepened, growing ever more sophisticated. Our brains became exquisitely attuned to patterns, even, perhaps especially, where patterns were faint, ambiguous, or incomplete. The mind became a pattern-finding engine, a device for weaving meaning from the fabric of experience, for imposing coherence on the unpredictable. Yet, as the world changed, as the threats of the savannah gave way to the puzzles of civilization, this gift became, at times, a double-edged sword. The same mental machinery that once detected the stalking lion or the coming rainstorm now busies itself with the complexities of modern life, the shifting numbers of the stock market, the swirl of news headlines, the endless variations of social interaction. The labyrinth has new corridors, new shadows and mirrors, but the drive remains the same. This ceaseless search for order is not merely a quirk of perception. It is embedded deep within the neural architecture of the brain. The visual cortex, for example, is hardwired to detect edges and contours, to group objects by similarity, proximity, and continuity. These simple rules, called Gestalt principles, allow us to see shapes and figures in the jumble of the world, the face in the clouds, the animal in the undergrowth, the hidden predator in the flickering half-light. Beyond vision, the mind's pattern-finding extends to sound, recognizing a familiar voice in a crowded room, discerning melody in a sequence of notes, or inferring meaning from the rhythm of a foreign tongue. Even in language, the brain stitches together fragments, filling in gaps, reconstructing sentences from half-heard syllables. At a higher level, the brain is ceaselessly engaged in what psychologists call apophenia, the tendency to perceive connections and meaning between unrelated things. This is the force behind superstition, conspiracy, and the powerful allure of coincidence. It is why we see faces on the surface of Mars, why we believe that a run of bad luck must soon be balanced by a good turn, or why gamblers feel the next roll of the dice is due for a win. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that this proclivity had, and still has, adaptive value. Imagine two early humans. One, cautious and pattern-sensitive, assumes the rustle in the grass is a predator and flees. The other, less inclined to see patterns, ignores the sound and continues foraging. If the sound is indeed a predator, the cautious one survives, while the oblivious one becomes prey. Even if the cautious one is wrong 9 times out of 10, the cost of a false positive, a needless flight, is far less than the cost of a false negative. This bias toward pattern detection, then, is a kind of built-in insurance policy. It is better, from an evolutionary standpoint, to see a pattern where none exists than to miss a real one. Over time, this has led to a species that is, by nature, almost compulsively meaning-making. But in the modern world, this ancient adaptation can misfire. The environments we now inhabit are awash with information, far more than our minds evolved to handle. The stock ticker scrolls relentlessly, numbers rising and falling in inscrutable patterns. The lottery draws its numbers with mechanical indifference, yet millions peer at the results, seeking a logic, a sequence, a hint of predictability. The human mind, seeing randomness, recoils. It cannot help but reach for a story, a reason, a pattern. In the flickering light of chance, we see faces, shapes, and portents. This is not mere fantasy, but a function of how our brains are constructed. When shown a truly random sequence, say a list of coin flips, people routinely judge it as not random enough if it contains too many runs of the same outcome. Conversely, they suspect a pattern if heads and tails alternate too neatly. Our sense of what randomness should look like is itself a construct, shaped by the very tendency to find structure. Consider the lottery, that enduring ritual of hope and chance. Each draw is independent, the odds unchanged, the numbers oblivious to past outcomes. Yet people pore over past results, seeking hot and cold numbers, crafting elaborate systems to predict the next winning combination. This is the gambler's fallacy in action, the belief that after a run of reds at the roulette table, black must be due, that the universe desires balance, that randomness will somehow correct itself to satisfy our sense of fairness. In truth, randomness has no memory, no sense of narrative. Each spin, each draw, each toss of the coin is an island, unconnected to those that came before. But the mind, ever the storyteller, insists on finding a thread, a cause, a logic. The same process unfolds in the financial markets, where the swirl of prices, the jagged graphs, and the endless commentary invite interpretation. Investors, analysts, and casual observers alike scan the data for trends and cycles, convinced that with enough skill or insight, the underlying pattern can be revealed. Chartists draw lines and curves, speak of resistance and support, head and shoulders and double bottoms, as though the market were a living creature with moods and intentions. Yet much of the movement in financial markets is, at its core, driven by noise, by the unpredictable interplay of countless variables. The pattern, if there is one, is often illusory, a reflection of our longing for order in what is, in many ways, a stochastic dance. The market, like the weather, is complex and adaptive, shaped by feedback, emotion, and the very act of observation. Still, the mind persists. It is not content with mere randomness. It wants to know, to explain, to predict. When a disaster occurs, we search for causes. When a coincidence astonishes, we suspect fate. When an unlikely event transpires, we weave it into the fabric of our personal narrative. We are, as the philosopher Daniel Dennett once remarked, intentional stance creatures. We attribute agency and purpose even to inanimate processes, seeing the hand of intention where there is only blind chance. This drive is not without its marvels. It has given rise to science itself, a discipline built on the search for patterns, for laws, for the deep structure of reality. Without this compulsion, we would never have discovered the orbits of the planets, the structure of DNA, or the hidden symmetry of the atom. The same mind that sees faces in the clouds is the mind that glimpses the unity of mathematics and the harmony of the physical world. Yet there is always a tension, a boundary where the search for meaning can tip into illusion, where pattern-seeking becomes pareidolia, the seeing of shapes and figures where none exist. It is the ghost in the photograph, the face on the toast, the message in the static. In these moments, the labyrinth becomes a hall of mirrors, and we wander, entranced by reflections of our own making. The labyrinth of complexity is thus both a gift and a snare. It is the wellspring of creativity, the root of myth and art, the engine of discovery. But it is also the source of superstition, bias, and error. It leads us to see gods in the thunder, omens in the flight of birds, patterns in the random walk of numbers. To walk this labyrinth is to confront the limits of our own perception, to understand that the very tools that make us wise can also lead us astray. It is to recognize the subtle interplay between order and chaos, between the world as it is and the world as we imagine it. As you drift through the corridors of this inner maze, notice how the walls shift and ripple with possibility. Each turn reveals a new vista, a fresh arrangement of shadows and light, suggestion and certainty. The mind's eye lingers over these shapes, forever weaving and reweaving the fabric of experience. In the quiet hush between thoughts, in the gentle ebb of attention, lies a hint of what comes next. For the labyrinth does not end here. Beyond the patterns we perceive, there are deeper enigmas still. The mind, insatiable in its curiosity, yearns not only to see patterns, but to understand their source, to grasp the rules that govern the dance of chance and necessity. So the journey continues, the path winding ever onward into the heart of randomness itself. What lies there, at the center of the maze, where pattern gives way to pure uncertainty? The answer, veiled in the mists of probability, awaits discovery, whispering its secrets in the language of chance. Through the looking glass, the world of the mind is filled with mirrors. Every perception, every fleeting impression is refracted through the intricate lenses of our senses and the silent, ceaseless workings of our brains. As you drift deeper into the gentle hush of evening, let us step together into the subtle yet vivid realm where scientists have sought to measure, provoke, and understand the mysterious art of seeing patterns in the chaos, pareidolia, using the tools of their trade. It is a strange pursuit, the study of patterns that may not be there, or are there only because we will them into being. Yet for over a century, men and women of science have peered through the looking glass, that is, through the looking glass of the mind itself, searching for the hidden rules that govern how we find meaning in the meaningless. They have devised clever experiments, conjured ambiguous shapes, and recorded the responses of volunteers as they tried to make sense of the uncertain. In doing so, they have both illuminated the depths of human cognition and at times revealed the shadows cast by their own expectations. One of the most famous of these experiments is the Rorschach inkblot test, a name that floats dark and inky through the waters of psychology. Picture a quiet room in the early 20th century, the air heavy with the scent of ink and paper. A Swiss psychiatrist named Hermann Rorschach sits with his subject, a stack of cards before him. Upon each card, a symmetrical blot of black or coloured ink blooms, like the wings of a moth caught mid-flight or the shifting clouds at the edge of a storm. Rorschach, himself a painter and a keen observer of human nature, had become fascinated by the way people seemed to see different things in the same ambiguous images. Some saw animals, others faces. Some conjured scenes of violence, others of tranquility. What, Rorschach wondered, could these private visions reveal about the mind that conjured them? With the publication of his book Psychodiagnostic in 1921, Rorschach's inkblots became a portal into the unconscious. The test, as he devised it, was deceptively simple. Present a subject with an inkblot, ask them what they see, and record their answers. But beneath this simplicity lay a great ambition, the hope that, by cataloguing these responses, one might peer into the hidden architecture of the psyche. Perhaps the images people described were not random at all, but shaped by the deep currents of personality, memory, and desire. Rorschach believed that the way we impose order on chaos, the way we summon faces from clouds and monsters from shadows, could serve as a kind of psychological fingerprint. The Rorschach test soon spread beyond Switzerland, carried on the tides of fascination and controversy. Psychologists and psychiatrists around the world began to use it not only as a tool for diagnosis, but as a window into the creative and troubled mind. In the post-war years, it became especially popular in the United States, where it was administered to everyone from school children to suspected spies, and even, famously, to the Nazi defendants at Nuremberg. To some, it was a revelation, a way to see past the masks people wore, to the secrets they kept even from themselves. To others, it was little more than a parlour trick, its results too vague and too easily twisted by the interpreter's own prejudices. Still, the inkblot test endures, in part because of its mysterious allure. There is something almost magical about the way a shapeless blot can provoke such vivid, personal visions. Each response is a small act of creation, a moment when the mind's hunger for meaning shapes the world to its own image. For the scientist, the challenge lies in capturing this process, in turning the fleeting dance of perception into data that can be measured, compared, and understood. To that end, researchers have devised ever more sophisticated methods for studying pareidolia and pattern recognition. Some use carefully crafted images designed to hover at the threshold between order and chaos, fractals, random noise, or photographs manipulated to blur the line between face and object. Others turn to the tools of neuroscience, peering into the living brain with MRI scanners and EEG electrodes, watching as neurons flicker and fire in response to uncertain stimuli. Consider, for example, the experiments that use Mooney faces, images reduced to black and white silhouettes, stripped of all detail save the barest suggestion of a human face. When shown such images, people often report seeing a face or nothing at all, depending on how their brains are primed. By altering the images or priming subjects with certain words or emotions, researchers can subtly influence what people perceive. The process reveals how quickly and unconsciously our brains leap to the conclusion that a face is present, even when the evidence is minimal or ambiguous. In the cool, humming quiet of the laboratory, scientists measure the speed of these responses, the patterns of electrical activity that ripple across the scalp, the regions of the brain that light up when a face, or the suggestion of a face, emerges from the murk. They have found, for instance, that a particular region at the back of the brain, the fusiform face area, is exquisitely sensitive to faces, whether real or imagined. When a subject glimpses a face in a cloud or a shadow on the wall, this area flares into activity, as if the brain has shouted "face" before the conscious mind has even caught up. Such studies have revealed not only the power of pareidolia, but also its pitfalls. Our eagerness to see patterns can lead us astray, causing us to find meaning where none exists. This tendency has been exploited and sometimes misunderstood throughout history. In times of uncertainty, people have gazed into the random and the ambiguous, tea leaves, crystal balls, the shifting shapes of smoke or flame, seeking omens and portents. The same impulse that allows us to recognize a friend's face in a crowd can, in the wrong context, lead to superstition, paranoia, or even mass delusion. In the scientific realm, the dangers of overinterpreting patterns are well known. The history of astronomy, for example, is littered with false discoveries. Canals on Mars, imagined by Percival Lowell and others in the late 19th century, turned out to be nothing more than the eye's tendency to connect the dots of chance features. The infamous face on Mars, a mesa in the Cydonia region photographed by the Viking 1 orbiter in 1976, sparked decades of speculation about ancient civilizations. Later, higher resolution images revealed the face to be an ordinary hill, its features conjured by shadows and the longing for connection. Even in modern medicine, pareidolia can play tricks. Radiologists scanning the shifting grey landscapes of an X-ray or MRI must train themselves to distinguish real structure from phantom shapes. At times, the mind's urge to see the familiar, faces, animals, symbols, can lead to mistakes or to miracles. The face of Jesus appearing on a slice of toast, or the Virgin Mary glimpsed in the rust on a highway underpass have inspired awe and wonder, though their origins lie in the ordinary chaos of pattern and perception. To study these effects, scientists have borrowed techniques from artists and illusionists. They present subjects with ambiguous figures, images that can be seen in more than one way, such as the famous duck-rabbit drawing or the old woman-young woman illusion. By tracking how people's perceptions flip from one interpretation to another, researchers gain insight into the mental processes that underlie pattern recognition. How quickly do people switch? What cues prompt the change? How does prior knowledge, expectation, or culture shape what we see? Some of the most intriguing experiments use noise itself as a stimulus, a sea of random dots or pixels devoid of any real structure. Into this chaos, researchers sometimes embed faint patterns, such as the outline of a face or an animal, and ask subjects to report when they see something. Even when no pattern is present, people often describe seeing shapes or figures, their minds straining to impose order on the disorder. By comparing responses across individuals, scientists begin to map the boundary between perception and imagination, between what is there and what we wish to find. More recently, advances in computer modeling and artificial intelligence have opened new vistas for the study of pareidolia. Machine vision systems, trained to recognize faces or objects, sometimes fall prey to the same illusions as humans. A neural network might see a face in the grain of wood, or mistake a cloud for a sheep, echoing the quirks of its human creators. By probing the errors of these systems, researchers learn not only about the machines, but about the deep architecture of perception itself. Yet the study of pareidolia is not only a matter of science, it is also a story of art, belief, and the shifting boundaries of knowledge. The ink blot, the ambiguous figure, the random noise, these are not just tools for diagnosis or data collection. They are invitations to play, to explore the borderlands between sense and nonsense, to reflect on the creativity and vulnerability of the human mind. There have been times, too, when the same fascination has led to misuse. The Rorschach test, for all its poetic charm, has often been wielded with more confidence than caution. In the hands of an uncritical practitioner, its ambiguous images can become a canvas for projection, not only of the subject's inner world, but of the examiner's own biases. In courtrooms and clinics, lives have been weighed on the shifting scales of inkblot interpretation. The very qualities that make the test alluring, its openness, its invitation to free association, also make it vulnerable to distortion. This uneasy balance between insight and illusion is a recurring theme in the scientific study of pattern recognition. For every breakthrough, a new technique to map the brain's response, a clever experiment to tease apart perception from imagination, there is a cautionary tale, a false positive, a misinterpreted signal, a moment when the mirror of the mind reflects not truth but desire. Yet perhaps it could not be otherwise. To study pareidolia is to peer into the very engine of meaning-making, to watch as the brain dances at the edge of chaos, forever weaving sense from the senseless. The tools may change, inkblots and electrodes, computer models and ambiguous figures, but the questions remain. How do we know what we know? How much of what we see is shaped by what we expect, or hope, or fear? As the night deepens, consider the gentle paradox at the heart of this inquiry. The same faculty that allows us to recognize the face of a friend, to read the expressions of a stranger, also tempts us to find faces in the moon, in the embers of a dying fire, in the random scribbles of ink on a page. It is both a gift and a vulnerability, a testament to the creative power of the mind and a reminder of its limits. In the quiet spaces between experiment and experience, a new frontier emerges, one where the study of pattern recognition becomes a meditation on the nature of reality itself. What, after all, is the difference between the patterns we discover and the patterns we invent? Are we seeing the world as it is, or as we are? The answers, elusive and shifting, flicker at the edge of awareness, like faces glimpsed in the half-light. And so, as you close your eyes and let your thoughts drift, the journey through the looking glass continues. Somewhere beyond the reach of reason, new patterns await, unseen, unimagined, yet always just on the verge of coming into view. There is a gentle hush that falls when one ponders the echoes of meaning, those subtle reverberations that pass through our minds when we look at a world that is, by all indifferent measures, a chaos of matter and chance, yet find within it a tapestry threaded with purpose, intent, and story. In this final arc of our winding journey, we turn away from the mechanics of perception, the circuits and chemicals, and gaze instead at the mirror our minds hold up to the universe. In that mirror, we see the play of shadows and light, the faces in the clouds, the voices in the wind, and we ask ourselves, what does it say about us, that we are so hungry for meaning, that we conjure it from the silence, that we paint it on the blank canvas of the cosmos? There is perhaps no more human act than to seek significance, to peer into the vastness and insist that it must be about something, that it must be about us. The stars, scattered by the hand of randomness across the velvet black, become constellations, heroes and monsters, stories frozen in the sky. The rustle of leaves in the night, the curve of a shell, the pattern of cracks in drying mud, all these become messages, portents, signs. We are meaning makers, and this tendency does not only fill the small spaces of our lives, it rises, cathedral-like, into the very architecture of our cultures. Religion and spirituality are among the most profound expressions of this urge. From the earliest flickers of human consciousness, we have looked into the void and felt it gaze back. In the absence of evidence, our ancestors imagined purpose in the cycles of sun and moon, agency in the thunder and the harvest. Spirits were invoked, gods were named, rituals devised. In every culture, in every epoch, there is the drumbeat of this longing, the conviction that there must be more than randomness, more than accident. The world, in this view, is not a cold machine, but a living text, written by invisible hands. The rituals, the prayers, the stories, each is an attempt to speak with the universe, to decode its intentions, to assure ourselves that we are not alone in the dark. But what is it truly that we are doing when we believe? Cognitive scientists have traced the roots of this impulse to the very structures of our brains. Our tendency to attribute intention and agency, even where none exists, is not a flaw but a feature, one that likely conferred survival advantages in our evolutionary past. Better to mistake the wind for a predator and be wrong than to mistake a predator for the wind and be dead. Yet, as our societies grew more complex, this sensitivity to agency became the soil from which gods and spirits sprang. Every unexplained event, every stroke of luck or misfortune was woven into a grander narrative, a cosmic drama in which we played a part. It is easy to dismiss this as mere superstition, a relic of a less enlightened age. Yet even the most secular among us are not immune to the pull of meaning. We see patterns in the stock market, portents in the weather, fate in the chance encounter. We search for lessons in tragedy, purpose in suffering, a moral arc in the unfolding of history. The philosopher William James called this the will to believe, the deep, often unconscious drive to find coherence, to stitch together the fragments of experience into a story that makes sense. Art, too, is born from this drive. The painter dabs colour onto canvas, the poet arranges words, the composer melds note to note, and in each case the act is not merely technical but alchemical, a transformation of the meaningless into the meaningful. When we stand before a painting or listen to a symphony, we are not content with the surface. We search for what it is about, what it means, what it says about us. Even abstract art, which resists easy interpretation, invites this quest. A canvas splashed with colour is not just pigment, it is anger or freedom or the echo of a childhood memory. The critic and the audience both participate in this process, layering meaning upon meaning, sometimes in ways the creator never imagined. There is a certain beauty in this, a testament to our creativity and our restlessness. Art becomes a dialogue between the artist and the world, and then between the art and the viewer, a chain of meaning that stretches across time and space. In the cave paintings of Lascaux, in the haiku of Basho, in the jazz improvisations of Charlie Parker, we see the same impulse at work, the desire to take the chaos of experience and give it shape, to make it sing. But this same propensity can also lead us astray. Our hunger for meaning is so voracious that it sometimes creates phantoms, conspiracies where there are only coincidences, omens in the random, messages in the noise. The history of humanity is replete with examples of this: the witch hunts, the blood libels, the panics and moral crusades that flare up when our pattern-seeking minds outpace our evidence. In the modern era, this is amplified by the algorithms of social media, which feed us patterns tailored to our biases, reinforcing our sense of secret plots and hidden truths. Yet even here, there is a strange poignancy. Our mistakes themselves are evidence of our yearning, our refusal to accept that the world is simply what it is. We are, in some sense, haunted by the possibility of meaning. The philosopher Albert Camus wrote of the absurd, the tension between our desire for clarity and the universe's silence. And yet, rather than despair, he suggested that it is in the struggle, the unyielding search, that we find our dignity. This brings us, inevitably, to the question of science itself. For all its insistence on objectivity, on the slow discipline of observation and experiment, science is also an expression of the same longing. To do science is to believe at some level that the universe is intelligible, that beneath the surface chaos there is an order waiting to be discovered. The laws of physics, the patterns of genetics, the cycles of ecology, all these are the fruits of our collective quest for meaning. We ask why the apple falls, why the stars burn, why the cell divides, and we are not satisfied until we have an answer that fits, that explains, that makes the world a little less arbitrary. But science, too, must wrestle with the limits of meaning. The more we learn, the more we discover the boundaries of our understanding. Quantum mechanics, with its probabilistic haze, resists our desire for certainty. The vastness of the cosmos, the brevity of our lives, the sheer contingency of our existence, these are reminders that the universe is under no obligation to make sense to us. And yet, we persist. We build telescopes and particle accelerators. We launch probes to distant planets. We parse the code of our genes. Each discovery is both an answer and a provocation, a closing of one question and the opening of 1,000 more. There is a humility in this, but also a kind of hope. Perhaps meaning is not something waiting to be found, like a hidden message in a bottle tossed by a cosmic hand. Perhaps it is something we make together through our questions and our conversations, our art and our science, our myths and our mathematics. The universe may be silent, but we, its children, are not. We sing, we tell stories, we search, and in doing so, we create a world that is, if not purposeful, at least meaningful to us. In the stories we tell about ourselves and our place in the cosmos, we see the outlines of our deepest fears and hopes. Are we, as some philosophers have insisted, mere accidents, brief sparks in an indifferent night? Or is there, as the poets and mystics have dreamed, a secret harmony, a hidden order, a reason for it all? The truth may be forever out of reach, but the act of asking shapes us. It is the question, not the answer, that defines our humanity. This is why, even in the face of randomness, we reach for meaning. The patterns we see in the clouds, in the flight of birds, in the rise and fall of empires, these are not just quirks of perception, but expressions of our longing to belong, to matter, to be part of something larger than ourselves. The universe may not speak, but we give it voice. It may not care, but we care fiercely, deeply, endlessly. Across the centuries, philosophers have debated whether meaning is discovered or invented. Is there, somewhere, a cosmic script, a plan, a blueprint, or is meaning what we make of the raw material of existence, the stories we weave from the threads of chance and necessity? Perhaps it is both, or neither. Perhaps the very distinction is a product of the way our minds work, the categories we use to frame the world. What is certain is that our propensity for meaning-making is both a gift and a burden. It allows us to create beauty from chaos, to find solace in suffering, to build communities and cultures. But it also exposes us to illusion, to disappointment, to the pain of unanswered questions. We are creatures poised between knowledge and mystery, certainty and doubt, sense and nonsense. Consider for a moment the vastness of space, the billions of galaxies, the uncountable stars, the planets orbiting in silence. In that immensity, our lives are flickers, our stories brief. Yet, it is precisely this context that makes our search for meaning so poignant. To seek meaning in the face of the void is an act of remarkable courage. To create it in our art and science, our love and our laughter, is an act of defiance, a refusal to accept that we are mere accidents, that nothing matters. This is the paradox at the heart of our condition. We are, as Carl Sagan once wrote, the universe knowing itself. The patterns we find in the world are, in a sense, the patterns of our own minds, reflected back to us. The meaning we seek is, perhaps, the meaning we create, and in that act of creation we become more than the sum of our parts. So, as you drift towards sleep, let your thoughts wander through the echoes of meaning that fill your own life. The memories that surface in the quiet, the stories you tell yourself about who you are and why you are here, the moments of beauty and sorrow that shimmer in the half-light of memory. Each is a thread in the tapestry, a note in the great unfinished song. The world is vast, and much remains unknown. But the search continues, ceaseless and unending, as long as there are minds to wonder, eyes to see, hearts to feel. And somewhere, in the silent spaces between the stars, in the hush before dawn, the question waits, unanswered, perhaps unanswerable, but eternally compelling, like the low, persistent hum at the edge of hearing. There, in that quiet, the echoes of meaning linger, neither fully grasped nor wholly lost, inviting you onward, deeper into the mystery. As our journey through the stars of meaning gently drifts to a close, we find ourselves cradled by the quiet cosmos, where patterns shimmer like a comet tail, fading into the hush of space. Rest now in this peaceful wonder, and when your heart yearns for more Dreamtime tales, return to wander once again among the mysteries that dance just beyond the night.